And welcome to the webinar on what it takes to teach elementary mathematics. Today we have with us Sharad Sure and Rakhi Banerjee, both faculty from the School of Education. Sharad has been associated with Azim Premji University since 2011. He has been teaching courses on mathematics education, teacher education, and statistical analysis for research. He has been associated with teacher development activities for 15 years now and has worked with DSCRT for school textbooks of mathematics, review and translation. Welcome. Rakhi has been associated with the university since 2013. Her work has focused on curriculum, textbooks, and the transactions in the classroom, highlighting students and teachers' role in the process. Welcome, Rakhi. So, welcome, Rakhi and Sharad, and take it away.
Thank you, Nikhil. And thank you, I think, Padma, Remya, for convincing us. I'll share the screen. A good evening to everybody who has joined on a Saturday evening to learn a little bit about what does it take to teach elementary mathematics. Maybe many of you are steeped into teaching and learning. Some of you are our colleagues from the School of Education, and it may be a little repetition, but I think we will do as much as we can. Sharad, do you want to go ahead, or how do we do it? So the plan for today is that we will take you through a little bit of an introduction to the research that Sharad and I were doing. The research, both of our work were complementary. So Sharad was looking largely at beliefs of teachers and then wanting to see if it has any correlation with practices. I was looking at knowledge and practice simultaneously as they emerge in the classrooms, not so much through only through interviews or so on. We will take you through a little bit of a brief of this. Then we'll give you some examples from the conversations that we heard in the classrooms. We will take you through, for each of these examples, we will give you a brief introduction to the belief sets and related to the practices. We will then summarize it and then give a small glimpse of the work that we did post this thing with some teachers and the way we approached it, given what we had seen. With that, I think do we begin right away, or are there? Sharad, do you want to add something right now?
No, nothing. Just to say that we can have the presentation, PPT and presentation.
Right. Yeah. Okay. A very good evening to everybody, and let's begin. We don't want to take more than 45 minutes. We'll try our level best unless and until there is something which really delays us. So for some brief things about our motivation and questions, we often hear in the education discourse as well as in research literature and in many writings in education that teachers learn from practice. But our question basically, as we, Sharad and I spoke to each other, we said that what do they learn but? So then we asked these questions about what skills or repertoires, practices or knowledge do they actually learn and use in the classrooms? What beliefs underlie their practices in the classroom? And thereby, we wanted a hypothetical question about what must teacher education, both pre-service and in-service, do for teachers preparing for mathematics. With these questions, we a small background to what we are saying, that we are talking about a huge education system with large variability in available resources like teachers, educational qualifications, number of students in a classroom, socioeconomic background of students and teachers. We also know from large-scale assessments with children in the age group of 6 to 16 that they are not performing as per their grade levels or age levels in simple arithmetic tasks, so especially revealed through the ASER tests. Paper and pencil tests where the teachers also seem to reveal that they do not know enough of the content and they lack awareness of students' mistakes in mathematics. We will talk a little bit about some of this as we go along. through the examples that we do talk. So why focus on teachers and teaching of mathematics and not something else? Of course, both of us come with some passion for mathematics. We have both been mathematics teachers at school level, and therefore, and at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels. And then we felt that good teachers actually of mathematics are as needed in developing countries like India as anywhere else in the world. There is a lot of literature, media articles saying that good teachers are sort of lacking, and it seems to be a disservice. This is especially crucial from the point of view of quality instruction and access to the power of mathematics and future life chances. This we feel very strongly with, because mathematics seems to underlie many affiliated allied disciplines that perhaps lead to better opportunities later on. Why do we focus on teacher knowledge, practices, and beliefs? Because again, 2005 study, which is one of the few studies which actually shows a strong correlation between students' learning outcome and teachers' knowledge of mathematics. Mathematics, and second point is that mathematics knowledge for teaching, even though we do believe in the fact that teachers do learn by teaching and do learn through practice, in and through practice, but this is not often developed by learning more mathematics or by experience alone. That seems to be sort of long, old kind of work, which seems to be telling us this. Dialectic relationship between beliefs and practices have also been indicated, and attending to beliefs is important for changing behaviors if we want to change any behaviors in the classroom. This is a framework that we developed for figuring out what to actually look for in the classroom. I'm struggling a little bit. Okay. So we believe that, sorry, is it okay? Is it visible? So classroom maths instruction actually is three components, where there are teacher beliefs, there are teacher practices, and then there is mathematical knowledge for teaching. The mathematical knowledge for teaching, we wanted to understand not through an examination of content knowledge and pedagogical content knowledge through written tests or interviews only, but we wanted to infer this from the transaction of the content through looking at the kinds of examples and explanations the teacher provides in the classroom, the way the teacher defines a particular concept or an idea, and the representations that the teacher uses, the purpose, meaning, and connections that the teacher draws between multiple ideas, within the same idea, the errors and misconceptions and how she handles them, and the nature of questions that are asked in the classroom, both by the teacher and by the children. We wanted to look at teacher practices through the practices of recapping, rephrasing, recasting, whatever we call these, how the teacher class organizes the classroom, what do we perceive as the teacher's role in the classroom, how does she use TLMs, if any, what are some classroom norms, how is the time utilized in the classroom. And the teacher's beliefs we wanted to see through nature of mathematics, beliefs about nature of mathematics, about teaching and about learning. We feel all of this is actually connected to the way the transaction happens, the way the teacher organizes the classroom, and the way the teacher thinks and feels and believes about teaching and learning of mathematics has an essential connection with classroom environment and access to mathematics. And we sort of try and define that in certain ways, that the way the transaction of the content unfolds in the classroom significantly constructs and determines the classroom environment and opportunities to learn mathematics. We try and understand this through student involvement in making sense, problem solving, if at all, if there are any opportunities for generalizing or explaining or discussing, asking questions or building connections. Similarly, we also feel that this sort of the transaction determines to some extent the extent to which it provides equitable access to mathematics for all students, in the way that it becomes explicit. The teacher gives explicit explanations or instructions, which is understandable by most children in the classroom, actually by all children. How the teacher develops mathematical language and reasoning by explicitly talking about it, and some ground rules of non-discriminating and inclusive practices for all students, so that if the teacher looks at particular kinds of students only in the classroom and so on. We will not be probably talking today about this. And we will focus on the other aspects today much more. The study attempted to infer teachers' knowledge and beliefs of mathematics teaching and through developed detailed observation of classrooms and their own reflections on various issues during interviews. And there were 2 interviews, knowledge and belief interviews. The schools were selected based on their willingness to participate in the study. The medium of instruction was English in these schools, and we ensured that the school had at least 3-4 maths teachers in the school. So each teacher was observed for 5 to 6 lessons, approximately 40 minutes each, and then interviewed for around 30-40 minutes twice, one for knowledge and one for beliefs. The classroom observations are still being analyzed for certain themes like how the transaction happens, what are the teachers' practices, what is the classroom environment and opportunities to learn and make connections across these and access to mathematics. So this is, so we worked with basically 5 schools. 2 of these schools were low fee private schools, 2 were mid-range private school, 1 was high fee private school. We looked at almost 120 classrooms across 21 teachers through these, in these 5 schools. Okay, so we start with giving you some examples of the kinds of things that we saw. This is a teacher whom we called S1T1. She is teaching grade 2. And she asks in the class, this is her first class, maybe not first class, second class. She has done some other multiplication where there was no carryover required. So she asks what is multiplication, and teachers and the students said repeated addition. Same number we are adding repeatedly like this. So she says she writes 5 into 2, draws this arrow, writes a 10. We are adding 2 repeatedly. 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, 4 plus 2 is equal to 6, 6 plus 2 is 8, 8 plus 2 is 10. Then she says, if you add the same number repeatedly, we can get the answer. For single digit number, we can add or read tables. For 2-digit number, which place to start? So she relinquishes the idea of this repeated addition, and she says, now tell me which place to start. Ones place. 3 threes, and she writes this, draws these arrows. She asks for 3 threes are 9, 3 twos are 6. And so then she asks, what is the next place? It's the 3 is tens, then 3 twos are is 6. And she writes this. So this is her grade 2 class, and she has introduced multiplication through this example and through this thing. And then they do lots and lots of revisions and practice exercises. Now, so every slide will be followed by some comments and a slide which is a complex slide which Sharad will take us through. There are procedures without any rationalization in this particular slide as we see it. A definition for multiplication is stated but abandoned in the slightly more complex situation where it is 2-digit numbers. Arrows are basically supposed to aid memory of the procedure, but our questions are, why do we do like this? What is the role of explanation in maths instruction? And what is the student supposed to learn in mathematics? So with these questions, I sort of hand over to Sharad.
The belief interviews actually followed observation of all the classes, and we had the context of having observed the classes to get a sense of what they believe in the nature of mathematics, their beliefs on learner and learning, teaching, and knowledge in mathematics. This teacher, S1 T1 refers to the first school that we went ahead with the observation, and the first teacher there. Her understanding of mathematics was largely like this, that she described mathematics as collection of formulae and symbols. I mean, in various forms. She gives examples of various formulae that children come across in mathematics, and that is the description. And we ask them what is the significant feature of mathematics that you think is unique and important in mathematics. You see that it is sequential, that we cannot learn, we cannot jump something, we cannot skip concept and learn. And more important in mathematics is that it is rule based. There are clear rules that we need to learn, and these rules need to be memorized so that we learn. It is here where nature of mathematics and learning somewhere overlaps. And when we talk about mathematics, obviously there are certain connections, descriptions, overlaps with the description of a learner and learning. Teacher description of learner and learning also falls like this. She thinks that children generally do not come with any mathematical knowledge to the classrooms, that they have to learn it in the classrooms itself. And it is obvious that they make a lot of errors, and because they are too young. So the teacher is teaching for grade 1 and 2. We have seen her grade 2 classes. So she says that children are young and they make errors in their first encounter. But if we give them more practice, if we ask them to be more attentive in the classroom, they would be able to overcome these errors. And children need to do a lot of memorizing so that they do not commit much mistakes. And their association with mathematics as something that they like or that they do not like is dependent on how successful they are in the subject in itself. Their beliefs on teaching, if we go, she thinks that we need to follow step-by-step method. We have to make content easy by converting it into step-by-step methods, and her role is to explain the, actually what she refers to as explain is actually describing what it is, and clearly articulating what are the steps to follow. So her role is to present idea, and her sense of creating opportunity is to give more practice and give more opportunity to question. So teacher believes that there has to be the content has to be presented as clearly as possible, and in the process one has to do activities because it helps children to memorize what they do in the class. Some examples of their beliefs about knowledge, which Raki referred to, is also presented here. Multiplication is to be learned using the arrows, the arrows, that vertical arrows that you saw in the previous exam. They help in learning. So in essence, teacher was not able to see the distributive property that was hiding in the whole exercise. So this is briefly about first teacher's belief system.
Okay, so we look at now a second teacher. She is teaching grade 4. And there are two examples, two small snippets from her class 4. So she is asking children to draw line segments with a scale, with a ruler. How will you know a length of 7 centimeters? So student says 0 to 7 centimeters. Why you need to keep your scale from 0 to 7 centimeters for 7 centimeters? Students say that time we will get correct answer. The teacher says give a clear reason. So another student gets up now and says from 0 to 1 it is 1 centimeter. From 1 to 2 it is 2 centimeter, 2 to 3 is 3 centimeter, 3 to 4 is 4 centimeter. So the teacher says yes. So 1, 1, 1, like that it is increasing. We will get 7 parts, so we will get 7 centimeter. In another class of the same, in the same grade, we see her doing rounding off. So she says 128, round it off to the nearest tens. So students say more than 5, which the child is referring to the units place. What should I do? The student says add. How much? The student says 2. So the teacher says, I gave you a trick last time. Write 1, 0, add 1 to the 10th place as shown in the picture above. Oh, sorry, the picture has been removed. What will you write, 30 or 130? The student says 130. Instead of saying rupees 128, we say rupees 130. Now a boy asks why we are not doing rounding off nearest to ones place. The teacher says then it will not come. Is there anything before ones? Okay. A girl asks, now after they have done lots of examples, rounding off to tens, hundreds and thousands. So the example that she takes, the teacher takes for 1000 is 1385. Now a girl finally, having done everything, she sort of sits down for a while and then she gets up and says, if we have 8 rupees, we can say 10 rupees. If we have 128, perhaps we can say 130. But 1385, you said it is 1000. And that's where we end, and we can take up questions. Okay. So here in this particular classroom, we see some questioning and reasoning by both the teacher and the children. The teacher's dilemma, as we seem to figure out, is to address children's question, complete syllabus, give tricks so that all can answer, because tricks are also seeming to be very important. But there are again questions for us. Did she think about why we do not round off to ones in the way she responded? What does rounding off mean? What context may be useful to think about this, especially when the child may remark that last question, that can I really say when I have rupees 1,385, can I really say I have 1,000 rupees? Okay, Sharad, over to you.
Yeah, so we had a very similar set of question related to their beliefs to the second teacher also. And this is how their responses seem like. For this teacher, mathematics is a game. She describes maths as a game that you play, and you have rules with which you play a game, and mathematics also has a game. And it employs multiple representations and symbols. These symbols are used to communicate meaning. She thinks that mathematics is unlike other subjects where you cannot learn by rote, because it is so vast that every time you come across with new set of numbers, and you will not be able to exhaust all the examples in the classroom in itself, hence we will not be able to learn by rote. That's a teacher's sense of mathematics. Then we have some questions on the beliefs about the learner and learning in itself. This teacher believes that children come with some baggage, that their parents, if they're educated, they would be able to help them in learning, and they help in doing their project. So this is slightly different from what we have seen in the earlier example. And mind you, this teacher is teaching in grade 4, grade 5. She believes that questioning in the classroom helps children learn. But what is most important in learning mathematics is the repetition. The significant aspect in learning mathematics is repetition. And they have difficulty. Children have difficulty in learning mathematics mainly because they don't practice, and in class they may not attend to children. Maybe this is from her experience also. She says that people who are irregular find it often come across with a lot of learning difficulties. The foundational knowledge seem to be one factor that helps children like or not like mathematics. Now, this teacher is teaching in grade 4, referring to some learning from grade 1 and 2 that children come with to the in the current grade, which seem to be contributing much to what helps children to like a subject or doesn't help in liking a subject. This teacher actually, when in our conversation about her beliefs about teacher, actually in classroom, she had used an example of a conversion scale rather than a formula while teaching conversions from one unit to the other. And we asked why do we use such TLMs and representation. She says that this one is that it helps in easy learning. The other thing is that they help in taking students' attention. Student to be attentive when we use these artifacts. She thinks that teaching is meaningful when we connect our conversations in the classroom to the everyday affairs of life. So daily life application is something that helps. And what kind of an environment is useful in facilitating good teaching and learning? She suggests that there has to be scope for asking questions. Students should be allowed to ask questions, and the opportunities that she believes that need to be provided for learning as a teacher is teachers should be listening, giving tests as an opportunity to know where do they stand, and opportunity to solve problems, as many problems as possible, especially on boards, which is in the general view of the classroom. That's her beliefs about teaching. And finally, when it comes to the kind of knowledge that we infer from what she has done in the class, we observe that the units that she has been teaching, she has taught about time and capacity. It is a mechanical act of changing from one unit to the other, without a real context to or a reason for doing that. In the process, she gives certain rules how to do it. Say, for example, multiplication and division with the powers of 10, how adding a 0 and removing a 0 would help. So that's about her beliefs about knowledge. Some examples that we could connect. Yeah, right.
Thanks. Okay. So now we look at a teacher. Now this particular teacher is teaching again grade 4. This school did not allow us to interview her, so we do not have a beliefs map for her. But the examples are very pertinent. How to divide a number by 10, 100 and 1000. Only if you learn this, you will be able to do 1000, 1 lakh also. Let me write a question. 3653 divided by 10, 46,342 divided by 100. T makes circle around 3 and 42. How many zeros are there in 10, 100, 1000? We will circle 1, 2, 3 in the dividend, which means those many digits she will circle in the dividend. So she will get a quotient and she will get a remainder. So the number which has not been circled are the quotient. The numbers which have been circled are the remainder. So this is also in grade 4 and the other one is also in grade 4. Why we learn reciprocal? Because it is supposed it is used in division. How we are using it in division? Suppose 3 by 5 divided by 15 by 50. Your first step. You're using the first fraction as it is. You're changing the second fraction to the reciprocal and multiplying. 3 by 5 into 50 by 15. Then a student asks, if it is 2 by 2, it is same as 2 by 2. What is 2 by 2? Some students say 1, some students say whole. How can we prove reciprocal and multiplying? Now this is one student which asks, and she actually is in a real tight spot because she could not help children understand that. So important ideas are treated arbitrarily. Rules given for manipulating symbols without any exploration. Can there be ways of making sense of these ideas for students? What are fractions? Can they be thought of as quantities on which we can do some operations? What knowledge does a teacher need to explain these ideas or make them accessible for students? What representational capacities are required? So with these questions, we leave this example also. And we have this final example. This is a grade 7 teacher now. So the teacher reads, sum of numbers is 18, one number is twice the other number. Suppose the number is 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2. If we take it as variable, it will be x plus x equal to 2x, not x squared. The teacher reminds them the notation and the symbols of algebra, saying that x plus x is not x squared but 2x. Then how will you do x plus 2x equal to 18 and then they solve the question. Then another example, after a few days, sum of 3 consecutive odd numbers is 63. Find the numbers. So students suggest x plus 2, x plus 4, x plus 1, x plus 3. Then the teacher asks for this x plus 1, x plus 3, why this? Student says, since it is odd number, we take odd numbers. So you are adding, so they have done a question of 3 consecutive even numbers, sum being something and find the numbers. And this question is after that. So the teacher asks why this? The students say that since this is about odd numbers, I must add odd numbers to x. Take one number and check x equal to 1. So then 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 3 is 4. So this is not okay. Then they check another representation x plus 1, x plus 4 and find that to be not also accurate. But then the teacher says, okay, somebody has suggested this also, let's check this, and they find this to be okay. Then one girl asks, how is it same for both even and odd? Then the teacher says, yes, value of x does not matter. It is not given whether x is even or odd. Also, you know, even plus even is even, odd plus odd is even, odd plus even is odd. There are only two cases. We get even if we add 2 odd, and we get odd if we add 1 even and 1 odd. Therefore, x plus 2, x plus 4. This must be the representation. And she leaves it here. So in this snippet, we actually see again a teacher's attempt to make sense of formulating equations and make it available to her students. Students also engage in the process, sometimes thoughtfully and other times with trial and error. The teacher actually uses a very useful method, sort of a way of thinking about this by repeatedly substituting numbers and compare and contrasting the symbolic representations to see which one is appropriate, keeping the arithmetic correct and making sense of symbols both simultaneously. But some more questions we have. What about explanations regarding solving equations? So once after the formulation of the equation is done, then the children just solve the questions and then there is no conversation. What about making sense of symbol manipulation and connecting it back to the problem? Because often when they have solved it, the teacher steps back to say how to interpret it back in the problem. What about generalizations like even and odd? Did she actually think about why the student, where the student was coming from and why was she doing it? Yeah, Sharad.
Yeah. So this is the last belief interview description that we are presenting here. What you would notice is that there is a slight difference in the belief description this teacher suggests when compared to the earlier two cases. When we ask what mathematics is and how it is different or unique, she says mathematics is an activity, it is a fun-based activity, it has a lot of application in our day-to-day life, and the purpose of mathematics teaching is to develop critical thinking. So this is one teacher who refers to the purpose of mathematics connected to developing thinking rather than giving more rules or suggesting that developing step-by-step mechanisms. So we would also see that her beliefs about teaching and learner and learning, and also somewhat connected to her description of what the nature of mathematics is. She says that children, now her reference to the background of children is that children come with different ability to do reasoning, critical analysis and understanding. And she believes that children need to ask questions and they have to find solution. They should be able to justify the solutions that they give, and we also need to give enough practice for children to learn. The difficulty that children faces in class is mainly because of the support, that lack of support rather they have, maybe at home or even in the classroom. Some students do not do sufficient revisions, refer back to what they have learned, and some students have personal limitations in learning methods. We ask also how do children, what is the source of their errors. Teacher says that largely errors are because of lack of clarity, lack of practice, and not giving enough attention and understanding. This is very similar to what we have seen in the earlier cases as well. Now, the third component about teaching, teacher suggests that what it means to be teaching mathematics. She suggests that teaching mathematics means explaining, helping children to reason, and help children to think. And what kind of environment that is needed to facilitate this. Teacher says that we need to be giving them sufficient freedom. There has to be some discipline in the classroom, but we also need to encourage them. We have also seen in the earlier snippet that in this class, children keep asking questions. Some of them are very, very important and valid questions. Teacher's role is to make things easy so that they understand this. We, as a teacher, we should also be relating content to the life so that they find it interesting. Teacher suggests that we need to use multiple representations in the class so that it gives them some clarity and avoids confusion. Since she was teaching, when we observed her classes, she was teaching algebra by and large. Our conversations were also around that, and we saw that she tries to connect algebra and arithmetic. She tries to suggest what is the structure in algebra, converting daily life examples to algebraic statements and reversing back. Trying to understand what a constant and variable mean. This is some of glimpses of our examples of the knowledge that she has used in the classroom. Yeah.
Thanks, Sharad. Okay, so we will now what we will do is that we will take you through we have given you some examples, but these two slides that Sharad and I will share will take you through a larger set of understanding that is emerging through looking at the teachers' transcriptions about their classroom observations and their beliefs. So this is not only limited to the 4 examples that we have shown you, but across the entire set of teachers that we looked at. So the teacher seems to be central in the classroom and drives the transaction of content. She models and demonstrates solutions. She provides rules and definitions and ways to remember them also whenever needed, either through a sliding scale or through a arrow or through some other pictures that we have seen. Teachers may not understand the questions of students always or their errors or respond to them. That's also something we see. Most pick responses selectively, steer them to correct solutions as fast as possible, and state the rule once again if they still make errors. Little use of different representations like pictures, concrete materials to make sense of mathematical symbols and procedures is what we see. Not much emphasis on reasoning, justifying, explaining, sharing, understanding. In fact, of the 4, we have shown 2 examples where there is some reasoning and justification, at least even if little, but it is there. Students expected to generally reproduce solutions for specific problems in the way they have been taught by the teacher. So numerous problems are solved in numerously different ways. Very little sense-making activity in the classroom, no independent problem solving at all or practice. There is no evidence of any generalizations that the children are encouraged to engage in. No explicit emphasis on developing language to talk about mathematics. So when this last teacher also talks to us, she says that equation is about proving LHS and RHS to be equal. Now that's perhaps not what we are doing. Yeah.
Again, to summarize what we have learned from various interviews, not necessarily from the first 4. We have tried to put them in these 3 categories. Now, their understanding of mathematics or what they believe as nature of mathematics, we can, by and large, most of them seem to be suggesting that mathematics is a subject with collection of large set of formulas, a good number of symbols and domains. They name them like algebra, arithmetic, geometry, statistics, okay? The collection of these domains, and they overemphasize on the step-by-step procedure that is followed in solving mathematical problem and the sequentiality. Sequentiality, they seem to be suggesting that one concept always comes after the other. There is no way that you can miss out. They also talk about application of mathematics when we refer to nature of mathematics, but the utilitarian purpose is either to immediate life. They give examples of doing and purchasing in their everyday affair, or referring to the application of lower use of concept learnt in lower classes in the higher classes. These are the 2 utilitarian purpose that teachers are referring to. There are no or very limited emphasis is given on ability to develop thinking, reasoning, or of anything of that kind. When it comes to teachers' beliefs on teaching of mathematics, most teachers believe teaching as a process of describing. They try to narrate things on their own. Very limited opportunity that we have seen in the practices also, that limited opportunity for children to interpret and explain. Rather, teachers take most of the time in describing the content, describing the rules, describing the procedures to be followed. For them, teaching is important. Teaching should lead to learning of formula and solving problems, and also to apply. Solving problem in the sense that they take all these word problem as application problems, right? So they say that learning should lead to learning of formula and applying those formula and solving the problem. They believe in giving a lot of opportunity to do practice, individual practice, largely doing practice in their notebook, then doing more problem solving on the board, and then again doing more problems in the homework books. So that is one thing probably cuts across as a common theme that teachers seem to be suggesting. Activities, some teachers seem to be believing that activities are important, and the reason for them to believe in activity is that activities break the monotony, and there is nothing more to it. Most people also suggest that there should not be any fear in the classroom. Children should be given sufficient freedom to ask questions, and a good balance of discipline and freedom need to be maintained. Many people suggest that mathematics classroom also need to be silent. Their activities I've already referred to. The third set of beliefs is about learners and learning. Two major areas that we have analyzed. One set of things about learners' difficulty, beliefs about learners' difficulty, and other one is about learners' errors. Teachers, by and large, attribute students' difficulty to students-related factors. They say they have not seen success, or they are lazy to do work, they don't do practice at home, or there are no the other one is there is no conducive environment at home, there is no support. But also they say they abstain from the classes, or they don't study properly, they don't have proper study habit. This is where the student difficulties are attributed to, right? Nothing that connects to what happens in the classroom or what the teachers can do about overcoming those difficulties. Again, when it comes to errors, some believe that errors are useful, but that usefulness is in identifying what kind of mistake they have done. Some people suggest that errors are useful because it brings their own overconfidence. It brings them to a certain level of, shows them where do they stand. And they believe that teachers' role is to correct their errors. And we have seen in their actual practice, most of the times teachers don't attend to many of the errors children make. They have been very, very selective in picking up the errors. And in many cases, they don't even realize that some errors has happened in student responses. The solution that they provide in overcoming error is to repeated practice. And this is one thing. Repeated practice is something that cuts across, whether it is the nature of mathematics, whether you talk about how do you teach, or whether even to what is the best way to learn. So that is something that we see across all the teachers, across all domains of their beliefs. Yeah.
Yeah. So what does all this reveal about knowledge, beliefs, and practice? The examples that we have presented indicate that beliefs are connected to their teaching practices. They organize their teaching in ways that are concurrent with their beliefs. If the belief is that mathematics is rules, then their classrooms are also very rule-based. If mathematics is more than rules to include activity, application, and there is a belief in the role of students' questions, then they find some traces of questioning and reasoning in the classrooms. They all believe in practice to reduce errors. However, in the classroom, all practice is collective, with the teacher leading the process, prompting and evaluating the responses without any of this being left to the students to do it. Beliefs is only one thing which underlies the processes in the classroom. The other thing is knowledge. Lack of exploration of the mathematical topics they teach in the class leads them to think very narrowly in terms of knowledge demands of the content, often given as rules, procedures without any reasoning or exploration. Teachers, when you talk to teachers, they often call this fitting to the level of the students. However, we want to argue that knowing more does not take away the capacity to fit to the existing level of students, but it helps teachers understand students' ways of thinking, errors, questions, and ways to communicate and reason about ideas in class. So it's not going to be any harmful. So, what might teacher education do? Teacher education should actually unpack the content for teachers, elaborate and unpack content in ways that it becomes available for the act of teaching. It seems all too packed because in the 15th century, 18th century, 19th century, somebody gave us this rule. So since everybody has been convinced by this rule, so why should I question it? And that's the predominant idea they come with, that it is rules and we must follow those rules without ever asking this question. Mathematics is not a subject where you ask such questions. Exploring definitions and multiple representations. So you develop capacities to define and create multiple representational capacities for mathematical ideas and concepts and connections between these ideas. You develop an understanding of the learner, elaborate understanding regarding students' ways of thinking and knowing, learning, and their implicit knowledge that they may get with any of these ideas. Understanding errors, develop deeper understanding of student errors and their use for creating learning opportunities rather than eyes stepping in to say that, this is incorrect and therefore this is the way you correct it. And you develop sensitivities towards multiple student backgrounds and a commitment to providing access to meaningful mathematics. I think we have run out of time. So we are happy to close it here. And when the questions come, we can take you through some of the slides for what we did with the teachers. Not all the same teachers, but some of these teachers and many other teachers. If that is okay, we are happy to stop it here with some of our preliminary findings and thoughts on what does it teach. Ramya and Nikhil can tell what is best.
We haven't got any questions as of now. So, you can probably take a few more minutes if you want to run through the rest of the slides quickly.
Okay. So some experiments that we were trying to think while unpacking the content. So of course we incorporate the other aspects that I just laid out, definitions, representations, learner, learning, errors, through some kinds of tasks. So we've done 3 kinds of ideas: whole numbers, number operations, and fractions. So use class snippets to ask if they find the explanation and elaboration appropriate. Use unfamiliar numeration system to encourage thinking about our numeration system. Something like this. Give a table like this and tell them to make an inference and then show that maybe we have underestimated children's difficulties with understanding a numeration system like 102 or 62. How does the child know it means 62? Showing children's work, both correct and incorrect, and analyzing them, and exploring possible ways of constructing the idea of numbers. Is place value the only way? Can I use a single unit conceptual idea and think about that? Can I use anything other than place value blocks? So some things like this. With number and number operations, we have looked at what do these operations mean? What contexts actually are possible to think about to give meaning to operations spontaneously to children. And then we have worked with multiple models and representations for word problems and operations. These are just some snippets of how do we think about addition and subtraction word problems? How do we think about multiplication and division as complementary ideas? How do we think about multi-digit multiplication? How do we think about division of 2-digit numbers? And what does division actually mean? Can we really think about it? Then we did something with fractions. where we try to show again students' work and thinking and analyzing them. We introduce them to different representations and meanings of fractions. After we had done that through multiple tasks of this kind, that you have these two and this is the unit, then what does the shaded part mean? What does the shaded A, B, C, D, E mean in this kind of complex picture? Can you shade 1/3, 1/5, 1/4 in the same figure, which is this? Can you mark half, 1/3, 1/4, 1/6 in a number line like this? Having done that, we try to reinterpret some of the common beginning tasks, like what does it mean to say equivalent fractions? What does it mean to say compare fractions? So basically problem solving of that kind. That's it. We are done. Thank you so much for the patient hearing.
Thank you, Rakhi. Thank you, Sharad. We had a few questions which came in earlier. And
we'll stop share. Sorry, Nikhil, we can stop share, right?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
So there were a few questions which had come in earlier. I can start with them, or Rohitji has a couple of questions right now in the chat window. Would you like to take any of the ones which came in with the registrations? I found one which I thought was very interesting. What are some of the techniques teachers can use to make it easier for children to transition from primary to upper primary grades, as abstraction gets prominent with children and children find it difficult to deal with symbols?
You want to start, Sharad?
No, you go ahead. Maybe I'll take the next one on.
Okay. So abstractions are always there. It's probably how we think about abstraction, because even whole numbers are very abstract numbers. Now, if the problem appears, perhaps the difficulty from transition to primary to secondary or middle school appears more prominent to us, perhaps because we the foundation that must have been laid in the primary is actually missing. Once we enter middle school, the concepts become much more. They are a second or third tier of abstractions that we are dealing with. Integers, rational numbers, algebra, and these cannot be done without a sound foundations. Now, we do not have sound foundations precisely because of the ways that we teach. And we gave you ample examples for how we teach. Now, if my understanding of division of fractions is that you have to take a reciprocal and multiply it, how am I going to make sense of rational expressions? Forget about rational numbers. And then I have to divide rational expressions. How am I going to do that if this is my only understanding? I have no other. And by the time 3 years down the line, I will forget even this. So I think we need to pay much more detailed and nuanced look at what we teach and how we teach. That seems to be very important. I don't know if this is enough as a solution, as a quick response.
I think in the time we have, I think it was appropriate. The next question by Rohitji is, how do you distinguish between beliefs about mathematics and beliefs about knowledge? Is it belief about what knowledge is important to be taught, or what knowledge in mathematics means?
Yeah, so in our research, actually, we didn't talk about beliefs about knowledge in general. Our conversations were around their classrooms, right? So we clearly articulated our focus is that we are going to talk about your mathematical practice and beliefs around what it means to be knowing mathematics, or what it means to be doing mathematics, right? In that sense, it is about not the it is what knowledge in mathematics mean rather than what knowledge in general mean.
Got it.
So in fact, the knowledge that we talked about is only with regard to, if you have taught multiplication, what do you mean by multiplication? Can you tell us once again? Why did you do this and not something else? So then that's what is meant by knowledge here, and not beliefs about knowledge actually.
There are some questions which are specifically about a study, and then some generic questions. I think it makes sense to start with the study questions first. Is that okay? If I go ahead with that?
Yeah, perfect.
All right. So the next question is, did you explore relationship between the teacher's belief about math and their own knowledge of math?
Yeah. So we have now data about both teachers' belief about maths and their knowledge of maths as observed through the classrooms. And we have not completed our analysis. That is what we probably will be doing as we go on. The preliminary understanding of analysis of one or two teachers seem to be suggests that there are connection between what they know about mathematics and what they believe about mathematics, though there are contrary understanding also. There are at least the example that we have given among the four. The last teacher that we referred to, her understanding and beliefs about mathematics is quite progressive, but her own knowledge about mathematics and how do we handle the mathematical concepts were very limited. In all other cases, beliefs and their knowledge were quite at a preliminary level. So that is what it is at the current stage. I mean, we are yet to explore the relationship across all the teachers.
Got it. Thank you. Sanjay Sharma has a question. Whether public government schools included in the research, how similar or different findings would have been?
Rakhi, you want to take that?
We didn't look at government schools in this research because I have a limitation with the language. I think that we may not find it very different because we did look at different kinds of schools. So I'm not very hopeful of an extremely different kind of teaching or beliefs, both.
Right. Next question by Dion is, did you get to explore what feelings teachers have towards math and problem solving, and brackets math anxious to math loving?
Yeah. I mean, we did not explore their own, say, affection to maths, but we try to explore their beliefs about students' anxieties with mathematics and students' liking. And overwhelmingly, teachers seem to be suggesting that liking, disliking mathematics is to do with the success. People who have experienced success seem to be liking it more, and the other way around also. I mean, those who are not end up disliking mathematics.
Right. There's a question by Ashima Sethi. Do you think the teachers are clear about the purpose of teaching mathematics?
Yeah. So in this description, we have not gone into judging whether their beliefs are appropriate or not. But if you go into trying to understand where do they stand, most of teachers' beliefs are quite traditional. I mean, the belief that mathematics is set of symbols and set of formulas and collection of domains probably would not take it far. And also with the purpose of teaching, they say mathematics needs to be taught so that they learn a lot of content, so that the children will be able to do mathematics well in the higher grades. Attention to reasoning, thinking, developing strategies, problem solving, very rarely attended to. There were very rare occasions when teachers spoke about these, say, higher aims of teaching mathematics.
Right, thank you. Anuja has a question. Did you find the teachers you interacted with resistant to ideas or open to new ideas?
It takes a while to get them open, but once they start making sense, especially I think we had teachers struggled a lot with the numbers tasks that we gave them. That this is the Egyptian, this is the Babylonian. Figure out how are they representing it. They spent, I think, almost about an hour to figure that out. Before they figured out that there was something happening with 60, but they couldn't go beyond that. Egyptian was much simpler. But the Babylonian, they figured out there was something with 60, but 60 and then moving from 60 to base of 60 took a very, very long time. But once they got it, they understood that how the numeration system that we're so used to actually encapsulates both these ideas. Similarly with fractions, in fact with word problems also, we had a huge struggle that why are you telling us to represent word problems? Why should we do this? Why can't we just tell them that, yeah, if you see more, if you see less, you can do add, you can do subtract. Why is this beneficial? So we had to go through quite a bit to make sense of this. But since these are often day-long or 2-day-long workshops, I think we do achieve some bit of understanding, but even any workshop is very hard to translate into practice because practice requires ground level support as they encounter difficulties, which is the difficulty with this kind of model of work.
Of course, there were reactions from the teachers saying that why do we have to go in this detail for such a simple topic like numeration system or fraction? Isn't that very simple that we just do it? I mean, why do we have to spend so much of time on this? I mean, there were also instances when teachers said, why do you give examples from foreign countries? Can you not give examples from our own context so that we relate to it? I mean, yeah, I mean, we struggle with that because we don't have enough instances to illustrate from our own context. There were resistances of different kinds, but overall, we think they engage.
So after we had hoped that the same teacher would come for all the workshops that we do through the year. That was not the case always. But in fact, we had on the first day, we had told them that next time when you come, please get examples from your classroom. And some teachers did bring in examples from their classroom, which was very nice. And then we analyzed those examples. Why did they think that they made an error? Now, how would they correct it? Which was very nice.
Moving on to the more generic questions, there is one by Varsha. How do you address the social cultural beliefs of teachers in teacher education? How one as a teacher educator would deal with that?
In this research, generally we haven't gone beyond addressing beliefs about mathematics teaching and learning. I think it takes a while for us to understand how to address that. But the literature suggests certain mechanisms to address the belief issues. It says reflection can be a very good mechanism. Counter instances to the kind of beliefs that they have been holding are very useful. That is one thing that we have been doing through the workshop, and teachers seem to be consistently saying that mathematics is about facts, formulas, and procedures. In our workshops, we have been trying to emphasize that in learning mathematics, how reasonings can be invoked more frequently than not. How children of a younger age can be encouraged to reason out about the content that they are engaged with. So that is how probably we try to address the belief issues that we have encountered with.
Thank you. Sonika has a question. Based on your work, do you think working with teachers, the way teachers could work with children, giving them explanations, activities, reasoning, prompting questions, would help them developing an understanding of the nature of mathematics, learning and teaching, and then they could take it back to their classrooms? She adds a note saying, majorly I notice people feel only higher education in math and teaching methods in mathematics is enough for them to be good teachers?
Yeah, I mean, see, belief is prerequisite, but having a belief doesn't automatically mean that classroom practices also be progressive. We have an example where teachers seem to be suggesting that reasoning is important. We need to be encouraging children to ask questions. We should give opportunity. Yes, they believe in that, but when it actually comes to the practice, they either lack the capacity to handle those unpacking of the questions. They cannot handle the question that teachers students ask them. They do not have the backs. I'm not saying everyone, but we have examples of such cases. So belief alone cannot automatically improve the practices. It is the combination of belief and practice that we need to address. That's exactly the underlining principle we are trying to communicate here.
Thank you. There's one more question which is specific to the studies. Shivali is asking, a number of teachers believe that memorization and rote learning methods tend to make students learn, and they try to prove their statement by making young students do complex operations. Did your study encounter something like that? And if yes, how was the unpacking of such beliefs done?
Yeah. So this is one belief I already said. Yes, this is consistently observed across that teachers believe that practice is something that the sole mechanism to improve learning. In our workshops, actually, we don't refer straight away saying that practice is good or practice is bad, but the underlining principle in our workshop is help teachers how to promote reasoning in the classroom, what kind of content knowledge that may be required to support that kind of to facilitate that kind of classrooms there, and hence seeing providing them examples that children can reason, children can think in advanced reasoning in lowest grade as lowest as grade 1 and so on. And from there we seem to actually try to make a case that children need to be allowed to ask questions. Children maybe need to be given opportunity to think, and given this opportunity, children will be able to attend to those broader aims of learning mathematics. But straight away we have not attended to this belief in explicit manner.
In fact, I think it is a good idea not to straight away say that you had this belief which is wrong, because that creates a lot of friction and problems. So one should not approach it this way. One should perhaps try and engage them with as many analysis of peers classroom. So other teachers, we actually often from these transcripts, we take out the name and the location, and we just put the transcript and say, how appropriate do you think this is? What would you do? Or how do you do it? Then we show how children, maybe street children, given an appropriate problem, how do they reason about it? How do children in some other location reason about it? And then they ask, okay, have they studied this? Have they studied this? So I think that helps them see that there is a possibility. In fact, the fractions was very enlightening because teachers felt that we had never thought that it can be reasoned with. Fractions were absolutely symbols for them. And they could, in fact, it starts from multiplication and division, actually. It's not fractions. So with division, they had never thought that division is about sharing, even though very small word problems are about sharing. So they do end up seeing this, that they did not know it, and therefore they did not do it. And because no one knows it, perhaps, therefore no one does it. So the tradition, how has the tradition been said? That's the question we are asking. They said, हमें ऐसा पढ़ाया था, उनके teachers ने भी ऐसा ही पढ़ाया होगा, and therefore that's how it is. Right?
Yeah. Krunal has a question. In the work you did with teachers, how do you work with teachers' own awareness about their beliefs, their blind spots, and the relationship beliefs they have with practice?
Yeah. So we did not attend to individual teachers' belief, saying that so you believe this and probably this is problematic. But as a whole, as a collective group of teachers, we have. I mean, schools also had asked us as a feedback. You need to tell us about what teachers know and what teachers think. So as a collective feedback, we have with a group of teachers from each school, we have sat together and shared what we have understood from the study, and that has probably without making specific marks to any teachers, we have shared this. Probably that would have helped. I'm not very sure whether they have clearly understood whether this is my belief that I have been holding and I need to change. I don't think we have gone on that. I really do not know whether we will be going that direction.
So we actually wanted to work with the schools, but then the pandemic hit and everything sort of just fizzled out. So the momentum that we had and the rapport that we had built with these teachers, I think we have lost it.
Yeah, pandemic has really hurt
Yeah.
all educational institutions in
Yeah.
a major way. The final question, very generic one by Shanti, is how can one encourage conceptual learning approach in math?
Unpacking the content. We have to understand what number is, what number operation is, what supports number understanding, what different ways can support number understanding. So when we say we have to make children, individual attention to children, of course, individual attention is not possible in a classroom of 40 or 50. But when we say that we must do that, perhaps in the spirit, we are trying to say that can there be different ways of imagining numbers? Can there be different ways of imagining how I multiply? Can there be different ways of thinking about fractions?
Yeah, like in my experience of teaching math, everything that, like how do you connect it to the real life and how can you make them, mathematical understanding is more important than whatever concepts or whatever theories we have in the book. And if they get that bit, I'm usually happy. There's one more question just come in. Did you observe or are you seeing the gender pattern of mathematical content knowledge of teachers in elementary grades?
Very surprisingly, in the schools we went to, we did not obviously see anything. But there was obviously very little mathematics also in each of the classrooms. So how do you distinguish this? In fact, we had set out to also look at whether there are caste differences. Children look at particular sections of the classrooms. In the heat of our transcription of the classroom and the observations that we very diligently do, we could not, of course, see that. And of course, faces don't reveal castes, even if the teacher is doing it. But gender also, we did not see anything very, very stark. Yeah, Ridhima.
Okay, moving on. Flavia has a question. Did no teacher place importance to using visual representation while teaching topics, especially in the grade 2 class? Post-training workshops, did the teachers realize the importance of using visual representation for children?
Tough to say, we didn't see the teachers after the workshops. So we don't know, but they did not. Even for fractions, nobody drew a fraction on board. They said half is 1 by 2, where 1 is written on the top, 2 is written at the bottom, and there's a line in between. I mean, even for geometrical constructions, teachers dictated the steps without drawing a single step in the classroom.
Yeah. All right, that was it. I don't think any more questions does.
No, there's one question. Sonika, do you feel based on your work, working with teachers, just the way teachers could work with the children?
I covered
can
this.
Help them. Oh, you have covered that.
Yeah. I think that's it. If you have no more questions, then I think you're done. Any final thoughts, Rakesh, Sharad, before we close?
I think I'm done. I'm good. Let people enjoy the remaining Saturday evening and not worry about elementary mathematics.
No, Raki and Sharad, two things I have to
really,
say. Yeah, sorry, Nikhil. So first of all, at the
go on,
peak,
go on.
at the peak, there were 49 people in this webinar, and Padma and Ramya would know that this is the best ever attendance of any alumni webinar in the last 1 year, or at least after I have joined, except for that fun event we had Monday. I mean, we had some song and dance and all that, right? Except for that, it has been the best attended webinar. So Raki and Sharad, definitely you attract a lot of people, right? So that's number one. And number two is no one has asked so many questions. I mean, the question answer round itself continued for half an hour. So I'm very impressed.
Thank you, Anurag.
It's also to do with the mathematics in itself, right? And everyone
really?
wants to improve
Okay.
the status of mathematics.
I thought it was you and Raki. I thought it was not mathematics, but you and Raki.
You have been.
Many of them here are our students. Yeah. No, many of them are our students. So they have been into our classrooms also.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Sharad. Thank you, Raki. Wonderful webinar. I got to learn a lot. I really loved your study, the format and the structure you use. I can think of so many things I can do using this format, in the framework in my school. So thanks a lot. I got to learn a lot. I hope the participants did too. Thank you everyone for coming, and have a good weekend now.
Thank you so much for giving this opportunity, actually. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for giving us this possibility, at least.